Welcome, everyone, to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham, and to start or introduce our guest this week, I want to read to you their mantra, which I think is incredibly powerful and inspiring. Our guest mantra says, "Stop praying for a lighter load and start praying for a stronger back." Now, our guest, Dr. Salome Thomas-EL, has been a teacher and a principal since 1987. He's written best-selling books. He's been a contributor on the Dr. Oz show. He's someone who continually inspires people with his presence each and every day. But out of all the things that he's done, I really believe that mantra is something that all of us could lean into. Stop praying for a lighter load and start praying for a stronger back. In our conversation today, we dive into the key to feeling successful every day, what he calls the 4 C's to school success, and then strategies to fight teacher burnout and turnover, which is a real problem coming off the pandemic. So I just want everyone to buckle up. Dr. L is incredibly inspiring and passionate, and he shares his heart, he shares his failures, he shares his vision for the future, and it was a really, really awesome conversation. So I hope you'll stay tuned. First off, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you. I wish we could make this whole podcast talking about your fascination with NBA basketball and the Sixers, but that may be a later day. So before we get started, we want to start with the same question we start with everybody is, who are you and why do you love what you do?
Who am I? I'm Salome Thomas-EL, otherwise known as Principal L. I've been a teacher and principal for 34 years. Much of my time has been spent in the Philadelphia School District, and now I've been a principal in Wilmington, Delaware for over 10 years. And I just love what I do because I love making an impact on the lives of young people and adults. As a kid myself, I was supported by teachers, many of them who did not look like me, but who were there every day saving Private Ryan, helping young kids in urban cities, tough communities, and helping us achieve our dreams. And they impacted my life in such a tremendous way that I decided that I wanted to use my life to maybe do the same thing, for another young person and just say to them, you can be me because I was once you. So I became a teacher and said, my goal is to help kids get into Penn State and not the state pen. That became my goal.
That's awesome. You talked a little bit about your childhood. What was your childhood like? Can you describe what your upbringing was like and how that shaped you today?
Yeah, and that question probably is very powerful right now because I just lost my oldest brother yesterday. I was, born and raised in the inner city of Philadelphia. My mother raised 6 boys as a single mom, and I was the next to the youngest child, and I grew up in a public housing project, public housing community. But a great community. My mother was very focused on making sure that, we understood that education was important. And my older brothers didn't graduate from college, but they were attending school. And my mother just said, one of my children must graduate from college, and walked into my 3rd grade class. My 3rd grade teacher was a young white female, not from our community. Had every reason to say, I can't focus on your child. I have 20, 25 other students to help. That's not what good teachers do, Dusty. Excellent teachers move ordinary children to do extraordinary things. She worked with my 4th grade teacher, was an older African-American female who had been in our school about 30 or 40 years. We thought she came with our building. She had about 10 after-school programs, and not one had a title. They were all called Get In Here, right? That was the name of the program. Because she knew to keep us safe, she had to keep us in her presence. Those 2 ladies helped me to get into a middle magnet school for gifted kids and knew I would struggle, supported me. I went on to high school, became a high school basketball player, thought I could skip college and go right to the NBA. My high school teacher said, son, you can't jump over a credit card. So you are not going to the NBA, but you're smart enough to get an MBA. Why don't you go away to college and help support the community? I came back and became a teacher and principal in the same community where I grew up, sir. And that's been a true blessing in itself.
So, you put a nice bow on it saying, I came back to be a teacher. That's not an easy decision. I taught in inner city St. Louis, and my wife and I spent most of our career working with inner city schools here in St. Louis. And so many families that I worked with and spoke to, their goal is to raise their kids in a way, and a lot of them will say it just like this, to get out, right?
Yes.
So you work towards, your college degree, which is a big deal in your family and your community, and you chose to stay, which is ironically the name of a book that you wrote. So why did you choose to stay?
I chose to stay because others made the same decision for me. I didn't realize it then, sir. But when I became a teacher, and as you say, the goal was just to get out alive. Just to get out and get a job, start a family. But I knew that if I was going to impact my community, that I had to go out and get an education and experience the diversity of the world. And that's what my teachers really pushed me to do. Go out and learn and come back and help your community. You can't improve your community if you don't improve yourself. And I realized my mother never owned a car, never had a driver's license. So the first day she ever set foot on the campus of East Stroudsburg University, where I received my bachelor's degree, was the day I graduated. She trusted those teachers, mentors who had taken me to school, picked me up, every year. And that really meant a lot to me. And I started working in television when I graduated, in sports TV when I graduated from college. I was working for a sports cable channel, and we were covering the 76ers. I was a huge 76ers fan. And I went in to talk to some kids in a high school about my job and started talking about how these teachers had impacted my life. And the student said, well, if these teachers impacted you like that, how come you aren't a teacher? And I'd never thought about that. I was like, wow, that they spoke to me from the mouths of babes. And I said, you know what? I need to follow. I need to make a difference, because these children, I found my calling, that day with those young people. And I quit my job, got a master's degree, and started teaching and never looked back. And there have been some tough days, because this work is a ministry. These children will keep you on your toes and on your knees every day. But it is truly a blessing to be able to bless others. And I think that's what my goal has been my entire life, is I want to be a blesser and not a stressor for young people. So my goal is to wake up every morning with determination and go to bed each night with satisfaction. And that's knowing that there will be tough days, but it's good work, it's God's work. So I'm proud of, I wear it as a badge when I make it through those tough days, because I know that I'm making a difference in my community, and also taking that message around the world and spreading the message, the gospel, about the power of educators, the power of mentors, of coaches, of adults who are making a difference in the lives of our young people.
Well, let's stay on the early side. So one, I do appreciate two things I just took away from that. One, it's incredibly important to consistently have a humble heart so that you can listen, especially to kids, right? Out of the mouths of babes. Like there's so much to be learned just by listening to kids, right? And you
yes,
can grow.
Sir.
And then waking up with determination, going to bed with satisfaction. I think that's great. I think going back, in our pre-call, just talking through sports with you right before we got here, it is clear that is a passion for you, and it is for me as well, which I think we need to have that podcast at some point. So you go down this path. I'm sure as you get the job with the Sixers, you're like bragging to your boys, being like, this is amazing. I'm going to do this. We're going to hook you up. Everybody, like, you're the guy. And then you all of a sudden you say, I'm going to teach. Right. So I can't imagine that decision was as easy as it just sound. But the real thing I want to know about is, what was the first year or two like teaching for you? Because there had to be moments where you're thinking, why did I do this? Or maybe there wasn't, right? Or this is so hard, I don't have it. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was like for you and how you continue to thrive.
That first year as a teacher was a rough one, because I remember calling my mother. My mother passed away in 2002. She was my life coach. She was my everything. I remember calling my mom and saying, Mom, I want to be a teacher. My mother was a paraprofessional in our school district. And she said, just remember, she's the best move you could ever make. She just remember that every teacher is not a parent, but every parent is a teacher. She said, you will have to drive that message home every day and support those parents. But I never envisioned how tough it could be on some days. And I just remember saying to myself that I would I'm not going to let these kids make me cry, right? So the first day of school, that was out, right? I was like, this is tough work. So I said, all right, my goal is I won't let the kids see me cry. The first week, that was over. I'd cry but what I realized is that there were just some young people who just weren't accustomed, many, to having a male in their environment, in their presence, especially a Black male, educated, asking them to follow directions, to sit down, to listen. They didn't know how to respond to that. But also, they were just young people. All behavior is communication. And the children who need the most love ask for it in the most unloving ways. So once I learned how to embrace the fact that it wasn't the children disrespecting me, it was many of them just didn't know about discipline. Discipline is a form of love. And so I had to become strong enough to discipline them and know that they would still love me. They would still like me, even though I was disciplining them. And once I realized that, it didn't get easier. I just became better at it. So it became my passion. So the teaching was my job. My passion was to get better at it. So those first couple of years were all about me making connections because I lived in the same community I was from. So most of those children, I knew their family members. So they were impressed that someone from the community was working in the school, but they also sometimes saw me as more of a brother and not a father figure. So that helped, but sometimes that would hurt. But once I developed those connections, established those relationships, and then realized, as you pointed out, parents don't keep their good kids home, right? They send their best to school and say, please do the best you can with them. And once, I was able to connect with those families and the children started coming home and saying, let me tell you about this cool teacher in school. He comes in, he says positive raps, educational raps, and he knows about sports. They love when you know about sports. And I know you probably grew up a Bulls fan, but, being a Sixers fan, we had to brag about Dr. J and Moses Malone and Maurice Cheeks and these guys. But once they saw that you knew about sports and that you were in touch with the community and their culture, then things began to really take off for me. And I realized that this was something I know I could do my entire career.
That's awesome. So then I know many of my friends who are principals or colleagues that we work with who are principals, I would say all of them were really effective teachers. And when you ask them about teaching, they just kind of tear up or they go to a special place when they're communicating like, oh my God, the classroom is this. And I just miss it. What was it, or how did you decide ultimately to leave the classroom to become a principal?
It was a tough decision because I was a math teacher and I love teaching high level mathematics to students who struggle, especially special education students, because I always believed that these were students who struggled, but if we raised the bar for them, that they could become better students. And I started teaching special education students chess. That's how I started my chess program. And I was teaching them mathematics and started using chess to teach them mathematics. And I was teaching in an alternative learning program, teaching elementary and middle school students who were frequently suspended, teaching them algebra in the early grades. Some of those kids from that alternative program have master's degrees, some are teaching. It's amazing because I knew that if I challenged them, if we challenged them, that they would rise to the level of our expectation. And if you don't challenge kids, you can't change their behavior. We had to challenge them. And then once my chess program became successful, I knew it was something I wanted my entire school to do. I wanted everybody learning to play chess. And that's when I decided that I wanted to become, a principal. So I wanted to become an assistant principal first. And that's how the whole I Choose to story is how the book was developed. I Choose to Stay, because I started, just talking about, I received I got another master's and I studied, I actually studied a little bit in London and Cambridge for my, supervisor and principal certification, came back from a summer, in Europe and became a certified administrator. And my principal had gotten a call about me becoming an assistant principal at another school. And he said, I'm very disappointed that you would try to apply to another school. And I said, I didn't apply to another school. And he said, well, the superintendent's office called and they want you to take another job on Monday. It was a Friday. And he gave me the phone number, and I called the superintendent's chief of staff, and I said, I'm turning the job down. I can't leave these kids. I never told them that I was leaving. I appreciate the job offer. I would love to be an administrator, but for many of these young people, I may be the only male teacher or administrator that they know, a male role model. I have to teach them that you don't leave for money. And they said, well, it is a big raise. And I said, how much? They said, $20,000. I said, wow, $20,000.
Absolutely.
But I just said, I just couldn't do it. And once the kids and the teachers found out, it turned into a $40,000 raise. I turned down a new car. And then the kids said, we appreciate you choosing to stay here with us. We choose to stay here. Many of us could go to other schools, but we choose to stay here because of adults like you and the other adults. And it's when I realized that, these children and families, they do have options. They do have choices. They make that choice to allow us to be, a part of their lives. But, a couple years later, we had won a national chess championship. Arnold Schwarzenegger came to visit our school, challenged one of my girls in chess. She beat Arnold in chess. And that was when I said, you know what, I think I want to become a principal, and decided to take over a school 1 block from our school so I could continue our chess program. So it was a K-5 school. So we now had a K-8, chess program where I had hundreds of kids playing chess, every day, critically thinking, problem solving, learning to see 3-4 moves ahead, not just on the chessboard, but in life. Those are great life skills, not just for young people, but for adults as well. So I took the leap, but I continued my chess program so I could maintain that connection to teaching, because teaching was my passion. Like you say, those other administrators, I know they missed the classroom. It's a tough change. So by continuing the chess program, and then also what I did too was I was a substitute teacher in my building. So whenever my teachers were out from time to time, I would cover classes, and the children do not love seeing the principal come in because, they just salivate when they see a substitute coming in the class. They just, who's the sub? Who's the sub? Oh, it's Principal L. But it was a way for me to maintain that connection, which was really important.
That's great. So tell me a little bit, and obviously I worry about open up Pandora's box with you to talk forever about the chess part of this. But I mean, again, for those of you who can't see you, you've got your 2 big chess pieces that are beautifully designed right behind you. And so obviously chess is a key part of your just life story. How'd you get introduced to chess? And when did you think, what kids are missing right now, they need chess? Tell me that story.
Yeah, and I'll be real brief because I know you don't have 2 hours. My teachers accuse me of being irreverent sometimes. They say, Principal L, you are the person most likely to hold up a staff meeting every week. So, but one of my older brothers taught me to play chess. He only taught me enough moves so he could continue to beat me. So I had to really learn on my own. And I was in college, and when I graduated college, realized the school that I was working in inner city Philadelphia years ago, I had a world-renowned chess program, and I wanted to rebuild the chess program. Started teaching those special education students chess, and they were walking around the school carrying chess boards. And if you don't believe anything else about a kid who plays chess, you assume that they are intelligent. So I learned early on as a teacher that smart is not something you are, it is something that you can become. And these students started playing chess, started beating other schools, going to tournaments and winning, and then they won a national title. And I was like, wow, these children, if we work with them, if we teach them that success only comes before work in the dictionary, that these young people they're resilient. And that's the key. When we're teaching resilience, when we're teaching children to become resilient, it's not about teaching them how to be successful. It's about teaching them how to respond when they're not successful. And that applies for adults. I see many professional athletes who just, when they don't win, they don't know how to react. And that's why we see those negative responses, because as a young person, they didn't learn to fail. They didn't learn that productive struggle. And that's what chess was able to teach these students. And at my school, Vaux Middle School in Philadelphia, these students were 8-time national chess champions, 8 national champion chess trophies in that school, in an inner city school, beating suburban schools, private schools. And these children travel all over the country, Seattle, Portland, Arizona, Florida. Students from our school even traveled to Yugoslavia to play against, a team there. So there's a large achievement gap, but there's also a major exposure gap. And that's that travel allowed us to give those students that exposure and it really impacted their lives tremendously. And that, to this day, even my elementary school, I'm a K-8 principal in Wilmington, Delaware, and my students won two national championships in 3 years. So I truly believe it doesn't matter who you are. Intelligence crosses all racial lines, all religion, economics. It doesn't matter. Gender. Most of my great players now, they're female. We were talking about this earlier. You let some young ladies, you let some women get involved in the program, they'll take it over. They'll start winning. There was a girl who beat Arnold Schwarzenegger, and our state chess champion in Delaware was a young lady. It's just amazing, the power. So I'm going to give women, I'm going to give them some props right now. Women they're powerful. They really are. And it humbles me because, we grow up in this world, we think, men are everything. But I'm telling you, you give women an opportunity and they'll show you, I don't know if you in your life have ever been involved in any sports activity with a woman and she just spanked everybody, but they will do it.
That's actually my life. My wife is a former college softball player, and we played on the softball team when we were dating, and she definitely embarrassed me on a weekly basis. But the funny story recently is my kids were watching. They love baseball, and we live in St. Louis, so baseball's big here. And they were watching that movie, The Sandlot, and there's this scene where the kids are going back and forth. The one kid sees another, and a kid goes, "You hit like a girl. You play baseball like a girl." And my middle son Noah looks at my wife and I, and he goes, "I'll never do that." And my wife looks at him, "That's right, Noah. We taught you the right way." He goes, "No, I'll never hit like a girl." And that started everything. And I'm like, by the way, in this household, the woman is the most talented person we know. And so you want to hit like a girl here. So I agree with you.
And Dustin, and you know what? The most powerful piece on the chessboard is the queen. So these young men, they better get what? They better wise up. The queen. That's awesome. The queen is powerful.
Yeah, I think, as you talk about chess, it's powerful to think through, how it helps kids plan several moves ahead and get into strategy of life, but also, to your point, that exposure of getting to see the world and be exposed to all different opportunities is game changing for so many people.
Yes.
So, you do a lot of, and we're going to dive into some of the advice you have for people that are leading schools in terms of how do you build the right culture? How do you go after success in your school? When you came in, when you were early on and being a principal, were there any mistakes you made coming in, like being super passionate, or was it pretty seamless?
No, I probably made mistakes every day. At one point in my life as a principal, I felt like I couldn't be right if you erased my left side, right? It's like, I can't get this thing right. But the best thing for me was having teachers who were patient. I was a young principal. I became a principal in my mid to late 30s. And I had so many. My mother told me, when you become a principal, she said, because when I wanted to become a principal, I called my mother again. And I said, "Mom, I want to be a principal." And she said, "You've lost your mind." I said, "Why would you say that?" She said, "Who in the world wants to supervise adults? Who wants to supervise grown people?" I said, "Mom, I'm tired of breaking up fights in the cafeteria, in my classroom." She said, "Don't you know, as a principal, you will break up more fights between your teachers than you ever have in the classroom." She said, "But remember, if you're going to be a good principal, don't be arrogant." She said, "Arrogance is the Achilles heel of the school leader." And remember, my mother, worked in our school. And she said, when you will go into your first school, there will be teachers who are teaching the children of the children they taught. They've been there for principal after principal after principal. She said, bow down to those old ladies and learn from them. Don't be arrogant. My first faculty meeting, I just used my conversation with my mom for my first meeting. I forgot to edit out the part about the old ladies. So I was in a little trouble my first year, but it was such great advice, wise, sage. My mother taught me leadership is about service. If you don't serve, you can't lead. So I went into that job knowing that it's my job to make sure that they have whatever they need. But there have been certain instances where I didn't always consult my teachers. I wanted to convert my elementary students when they went on to middle school. Some of them were struggling. They were honor roll students in elementary school, but not doing well in middle school.
Yep. And
I knew part of it was the connections in elementary school. Those students really needed to maintain those connections. So I did some research and saw students in K-8 buildings were much more successful in in middle school than they were when they left to go to a middle school. And so I decided I wanted to convert our elementary to a K-8 and didn't consult the teachers first. And so I didn't have that buy-in. And they supported it, but it's better as a leader if you guide people, if you work with them. And then once I learned that's the best way, is for teachers to know I'm willing to get in and do the same work. That's why I would go in and cover classes, but also your input is valuable. We have experts in our classrooms, in those teaching positions, in those para positions, cafeteria bus drivers, so many great ideas that as leaders, we have to be open to learning. So that's why my goal is, as a principal still to this day, 20 plus years as a principal, is to build a learning culture and not a teaching culture. Everybody in our building can learn from one another. We can learn from those young people. So that was one of my big mistakes, was not understanding that I could learn from others, that I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I know everything. No, I once I saw that the rapid growth took place when I had everybody in the same boat. When everybody realized we're all passengers, there's no crew. We're all working together, and you have my support, and I'm working with you. I was able to really get that boulder, push that boulder and get it moving. And I told my staff, that boulder's big and it's heavy. And once it starts moving, it is hard to stop it. But the key is making sure that we're very inclusive in those voices, even when they're diverse, even when they disagree. Embrace it, because the common denominator is the success of our children.
Mm. How many years do you think it took? So you've been a principal for 20 years. How many years do you think it took to really get your feet under you and feel like this is the school that I am so proud to be a part of? Not that you weren't ever proud to be a part of it, but you felt like the vision you had for your culture, for your staff and your students and your families was all kind of arrows. Even if you had some issues, they were all arrows pointing straight ahead.
Okay, now the honest answer. So I'll tell you, my TV answer to that is the first couple years. But the honest answer from my heart, it probably took me almost a decade. That's really, for me to really realize what it took to understand and communicate in a purpose-driven way, right? Intentional every day about it. Probably 10 years to realize that the school belongs to the community. And that, so we have to understand that. So everything that we provide really should be for the benefit of the community. When we support those children, we're supporting their families. So I started hosting college courses in the school building. Folks can't get to college, and you come to the school building. I have colleges willing to give courses right in the school building. Get a medical center built right onto the side of the school. You won't go take your child to the doctor when you come in for your IEP meeting, you're coming for your meeting with me because your child is given an aspirin, a headache every day in my classroom, and you come on and go into stop over and see the dentist, stop over and see the eye doctor, providing those community supports. Now, I'm sure there'll be people who say, well, wow, you're providing everything for them. What are they doing for themselves? No, we're providing access. So, but it gives them a chance to be able to teach them what they need. We have to go to where they are and take them to where they need to go. And it took me about 10 years to realize the power of connections, relationships, of building that respect with them and being visible, not only in the school, but in the community as well. So after 10 years, I was rolling. But the first 10, I was really learning. I was like an apprentice, every year with it.
Well, I feel like that's really encouraging because if you look at statistics out there, I think what the average principal, depending on obviously demographics of a district and stuff, but I think it's 3 to 4 years, maybe they'll stay in a building. And so to just know that someone like you who's having phenomenal success, yeah, there's some things that pretty early if you could fit or not, but it may take 5 years to 10 years to really get your feet into it. So it's okay to go on that roller coaster ride.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And it's a struggle. That's why I tell people you can't give up, because anything worth it is going to be a struggle. So, first couple years were really tough. Once you get into that 5-year window, you know what? Yeah, I don't have to eat a whole pie to know it tastes good, right? I think I can do this long term. And then you're at 10 years where, it's a part of your blood now. It's what you wake up and you do. And then after that, now you're starting to influence other potential leaders, because you have people who've been, because good leaders don't create more followers. Good leaders create other good leaders, and excellent followers become great leaders. So that's what I also try to coach folks around as well, is be a good follower. If you see great leadership, learn from it, be humble, understand and be comfortable celebrating the success and greatness of other people. There's nothing wrong with it, because you will learn so much and learn from my mistakes. What I tell all of my assistant administrators, learn from my mistakes. Any fool can learn from his own mistakes, learn from the mistakes of others. My APs are tremendous. These assistant principals around the country around the world. They make it happen. And my APs, they're my backup. So I tell people, when you act up, you see my backup, right? So, APs, tip my hat to them, because they don't always get the credit, but they do a lot of the grunt work. And that's assistant in any role, whether you be at the superintendent level, at the building level, wherever you are. Most times the assistant, even those people who assist us in the work we do, right? If you have an assistant somewhere, they make it happen every day to keep you from double booking events and programs, and they make it happen. So that's the service, right? Those who serve others are truly making a difference out there.
That's great. You said something about success. So I think about a conversation we had recently about, the 4 C's to school success that you've got. I'm fascinated by them. And I think they really hit both my heart and my head as I think about being back in my schools. Can you share what those 4 C's are?
So the 4 C's, my 4 C's of school success. When I took over, my first school was a turnaround school. And when I decided I wanted to become a principal, I knew I wanted to be focused. So I couldn't be all over the place, right? I had to find some specific areas I was going to focus on. So I knew that I had to create an environment where every child knew that they had a champion. Rita Pearson talked about that often. Every child needs that advocate, that champion. So my first C is that every child deserves someone crazy about them. We have to be crazy about our kids. Those kids have got to know we're willing to do anything we can to help them become successful, to help them get the support that they need. That's the equity that we desire so much in education and in the world, is doing everything we can, giving kids everything they need so that they can find that success at some point in their life. So being crazy about kids. The second one is being curious about the lives of children outside of school. This pandemic has really taught us how important it is for us to know about our children outside of school. Those teachers and those principals and counselors and nurses who knew what children didn't have internet at home, didn't have devices at home, didn't have great meals, who were homeless, who were moving from home to home, couch to couch, they were able to shift right away and provide needed services and support to those families. So being curious, Albert Einstein often talked about curiosity. We need to be building curious schools where children can develop their own curiosity, but our teachers and adults can be curious about the children, the work that they're doing, and about their lives outside of school. The third one is consistent adults in the lives of children. These children don't need to come in schools and see a new teacher every year. We had a school here in Philadelphia one year, 52 teacher vacancies in one building, a large middle school. That's devastating. And those children take the same state test as children who are in schools with the same teachers for 5 and 10 years. They need consistent adults. That's why I chose to stay early in my career, because I knew those students need to see that consistency, because often they may not see it in their homes. And that's regardless of what community you live in. Across America, we have a very high divorce rate. We have a large number of children who are living in homes without their fathers there. So if they can't find that consistency at home, that's why I'm always driving and pushing males to get involved in education. You don't have to be a teacher, just be involved. And then my last one is a strong school culture, a culture of love and support for children. The principal is the prime facilitator of culture in the school. So A strong culture where we're lifting up others through positivity will make a huge difference. And one where teachers feel that they can take risks, that they feel safe, they feel nurtured, but also where they feel celebrated and not tolerated.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, those are amazing. So I think about, you got be crazy about kids. I think it's so important. So you kind of tease out, do you really love kids? Are you all there for them? And then you go on to being curious about their lives outside of school. Is that right? Is that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
so I think that's incredibly important. So you really understand the full picture of the kid, right? And I'm going to skip to the fourth just because I want to revisit the third. So the last one is building that great culture of love and positivity. That consistency piece. One thing that strikes me there is, I've been reading a lot of articles lately where it says that teachers are more burnout than ever. And so in the past, your schools that you worked with in inner city Philadelphia are similar to the ones my wife and I worked with in inner city St. Louis. There's lots of turnover of staff all the time, but I think that turnover could be something that all districts are going to be dealing with now and into the future. As a principal, what advice do you have for a principal to fight like crazy to make sure that's not the story of their school?
Well, listen, you hit a home run with that question, because after the pandemic, it's going to be and many researchers and educators are discuss this as well. It's going to be an exodus of teachers. Some felt disrespected, some didn't feel supported, didn't feel appreciated. So, and then some are just tired. Some are uninspired. This pandemic really weighed, heavily on many educators. So you're going to find many school districts. I see districts reporting that there's superintendents who are retiring at an alarming rate, principals who are retiring, teachers who are retiring. So it becomes very important for school leaders to realize that we must retain especially those talented teachers, because there are going to be other school districts who may be recruiting them. And I often say that the best form of recruitment is retention, and the best form of retention is recruitment. So make sure that those teachers are feeling appreciated other than Teacher Appreciation Week. Make sure that when, do whatever we can to provide the professional and personal development for those teachers, helping to deal with remote learning, the pandemic. Sometimes we just will deliver coffee or sandwiches to doors of teachers. Just, hey, listen, put your lunch or take your lunch home, save it for later. We're going to do lunch, for you today. Or listen, I'll cover that class for you. You take a break. You got an elderly parent who's home not doing well. You stay home and take care of the parent. Don't worry. Those are the kinds of things that they stress about. Got a sick child and I got to take off work. No, in my building, you will get written up for not putting your family first. Family must come first, or you're going to be in my doghouse. So, and people appreciate that. You don't get any dirty looks from us when you place your family first, because you're being a great example and role model for our children, because they learn about becoming parents from the adults that they're around. Children emulate what they see. So when they see that, it's very important. Let's make sure that we go beyond the baby showers, the wedding showers, the birthday parties. Let's celebrate people for the growth that they make. If they're out there getting educated, if they're if they're students, if they found a way to develop a strong culture in the building, let's celebrate that and develop a family feeling. Teachers say to me often that they stay in buildings because it feels like a family. They just can't see themselves leaving their family. And so that's always been my goal. And I'm very proud when I hear teachers say, we are family. We have shirts in our school that says, we are family on the back, because we all support each other. We look out for one another. And it's going to be a tough time in the next year or two. And that's why, I just co-authored this book, Retention for a Change, because we've got to change our practices in school, the way we develop school cultures, if we're going to prioritize teacher retention and principal retention. We've got to build those cultures, build schools where parents are knocking the door down to get in and not knocking the door down to get out.
That's so true. One quote, and I know we're really stretched for time right now, so got two questions left for you.
I told you I was a reverend.
I love it. I'm in. I love it. So, one, I really need to ask, because I just sent a quote that you shared with me and that you obviously have on your website, so anybody could find it, that is perfect for me, I think, every day, and anybody every day. But I have a close friend who's going through a real tough time right now. And so it was something that hit us at the right time. Your quote is, stop praying for a lighter load and start praying for a stronger back. Where did you get that? And why is that, seems to be kind of the mission statement of your life almost, or just a common bit of advice that you give to folks?
Yeah, it is a mission statement. It's something I share with every audience where I speak. I'm actually going to be speaking in Jordan and Utah this summer. Looking forward to it. I'm sure I'll be, in your area at some point, but I share it with every audience because to me, my breakthrough was when I realized that I had to stop waiting for the job to get easier, that I had to become stronger, that when I had teachers and I had adults working in my building who opposed change, I had to stop viewing as they were opposing me. They were resistant to change because it was new. I had to help them to understand that the change was going to impact them in a positive way and impact the children. So I had to stop waiting for it to get easier, and I had to work harder. Now, I'm not dismissing the fact that there are some days when I just say, listen, I just can't do it, right? I'm not there. I'm not the 100% I need to be. So some days I don't have that strong back.
Yep.
But I also knew that I had to begin to work on my own mental and physical health. So I'm making sure I'm exercising and eating right so I can be strong, for those battles. But I think when we begin to look at the work, the hustle, the grind, when we look at it as it's not going to get easy or easier, it's just I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get better at dealing with it. I think it kind of helps to ease some of the stress of knowing that I'm not going through anything. I'm not going to do anything that the principal in California, in Florida, in New York, in Massachusetts, and Texas, I'm not going to do anything different than what they're dealing with. We all are in the foxhole, the trenches together. It's just that I've got to make sure that I build the strength. I build that stronger back to be able to make it through, because if I do, I know that on the other side, there's a blessing waiting, there are opportunities for growth and for children to see that they can become successful because I believed in them until they believed in themselves. And that's that's really my mission every year when the school year starts. I tell children, I loved you before I ever met you. So there's nothing you can do. You can call me any name you want, right? It's not going to change how I feel about you because I loved you before you even walked in the school building. And then it lets them know, wow, you love me without exception. You love me without expectation. And that's when they begin, because they're not taught to love some of them. Some of them won't even let you look them in the eyes because the eyes are the window to the soul. So we have to teach them how to love. And when they do, they love us back. And then they love one another, much more.
That's great. I think when I was going through some really tough years a few years ago, there's circling back to basketball. So I loved watching Duke basketball growing up, and Jason Williams, now Jay Williams on TV, was just one of the best players I'd seen in a long time. And he was he played high school ball not too far from me, I think maybe. Mm-hmm. He, after his motorcycle accident where he basically lost his career after winning Rookie of the Year, he said he spent years asking God, why me? Why me? And it wasn't until he flipped that paradigm and said, why not me? I've got all this talent. I've got all this determination and grit. I was designed for this challenge. And so when I see your quote of praying for that stronger back, I think that is so key for all of us, no matter if you're a principal, educator, non-educator. Like, I think that is a critical paradigm to have in a view of your life. So
even as parents, we're both fathers, we're parents, right? We're husbands. We know there's some days when you just got to have that strong back, because Lord knows, these children, they can test us sometimes, life will test us. But we were placed in this life for a reason. And that's what Jay Will realized. Johnny Dawkins was a great Duke player, played for the Sixers. Mike Jaminski. So Gene Banks from Philly played basketball in Philly Duke. So, we have some connections, man. We got to talk at some point.
We're gonna have a basketball breakdown. By the way, my roommate from high school on an AAU team, Kwame Brown, has made a lot of news this week. So I'm curious.
So was Kwame your roommate?
He was. He won't remember me, but that was my. When you have a guy that's that big, you go for years. It's a big deal in my life. I'm sure he's like, Dustin, who? Anyways,
yeah, he was an underachiever. Now he was an underachiever.
Well,
great
yes,
potential, great talent. Yeah, but I know he dealt with some injuries and whatnot. So.
Underachieving and perspective is all about perspective, right? That gentleman grew up in a very poor part of southern Georgia, and worked his tail off to get to have the opportunity to be drafted first. And yes, he may not have had MVPs or led anybody to a championship, but he had an 8-year career in the NBA and made $64 million and bought a house. I mean, he'll tell you first thing, he's like, I may have failed by the world standards, but I am absolutely a success. I told my mom at 5, I was going to buy her a house, and I bought her a house. Like it's all about perspective, right? So anyways,
you just actually changed my perspective on his career, because you understand, because coming from where he came from, imagine how many people have that opportunity and maximize that the way he did. So great education on that. That's phenomenal. I mean, that's phenomenal, because it's the duty of the young to take care of the old, not the old to care for the young. So the fact that he could provide for his mother, that in itself is success.
I agree. So anyways, before we let you go, last question. What's on your heart right now, Reverend? One piece of advice for our listeners on what's one step that we can focus on to create positive change in our lives, to be better leaders and better servants of others.
I think what I'd love to see in our country and in this world is I'd love to see us become more understanding and patient of one another. I think we live in a world where we battle so much when we have different viewpoints. But I think we're still more alike than we are different. So what's on my heart is I really want to see us come together and realize that our children are depending on us to create a world that's going to be better for them. That can't happen if we don't create school systems that challenge our students, but support them. If we don't create school systems that are able to retain these talented teachers that we have, we've got to make sure that there's so much more love and grace and mercy, understanding, in this world. And this pandemic has taught me about the resilience of teachers and young people. People are talking about this learning loss, but what I'm learning about is that they're so strong that no one, a year ago in March, teachers were asked to go home and start teaching. They weren't given a stimulus check or anything. Go home and start teaching, something they've never done before. Children were sent home to start learning. And we saw the power of connectedness, of unity, of everyone working together. So I believe that there's hope in sight. But I think that in order for us to maximize that, we've got to have more love, more patience, more grace, and more mercy, for one another, and empathy. We're all going, like I said, I'm going through with the principal in Texas, California, Minnesota, Florida, doesn't matter where they are. They all want their students to become successful. They want their students to realize their dreams. So I'm just saying to your audience out there, let's keep fighting for one another. Let's keep working together. And let's realize that this world can be a better place if we become united, not untied. The same words, same letters, just spelled differently. More united and less untied, but together we can make a difference.
Well, Principal El, I'm okay with the reverend tendencies you have. It's an incredible blessing to just be in this room with you, and for everybody to be listening. You have 3 books that you've co-authored recently, right? One is called Passionate Leadership. Am I right? Second is
sir.
Building a Winning Team. And the third is Retention for a Change. And so just real quickly, Retention for a Change, you hit on a little bit. What is that about? So listeners that are looking for a book to help them right now.
So Retention for a Change is really about those strategies for school leaders, any administrators, really to motivate, energize, and inspire our school cultures so that we can retain our most talented teachers, and administrators. What are those things that we can do right in our buildings right now to develop these cultures where people want to be there? When folks leave schools, most time they leave because of the culture or the leadership. So we've got to make sure that we're creating these school buildings, and also making sure that we control the narrative about our schools. Don't let everyone else tell the story. The view of a school from the outside looking in is much different from the inside looking out. Let's tell those positive stories on social media, which is huge, which is powerful. Tell the stories of those wonderful children and adults who are in our buildings every day.
That's great. Well, thank you for being you. Thank you for coming here, but also thank you for continuing to push forward and share what's on your heart and your mind with so many folks to help us get better as educators. We really appreciate your presence, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I'm blessed to know you, and just looking forward to growing this world with you and your entire team.
I appreciate you. All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Please support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, podcast on Apple or Spotify, and help us celebrate the beautiful, messy work of shaping human potential.